So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining Empowering 21st Century Teenagers. Um, without, I'd really like to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Joan Kang Shin is an Associate Professor of Education at George Mason University and the Academic Program Coordinator of the Teaching Culturally and Linguistically Diverse and Exceptional Learners Program. Dr. Shin specializes in teaching ESL and EFL to young learners and teenagers and has provided professional development programs and workshops to EFL teachers in over 100 countries around the world. She's the series editor of National Geographic Learning's Young Learner programs, Welcome to Our World, Explore Our World, author of Teaching Young Learners English, and the series editor of our new program for teenage learners, Impact. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Shin today. Thank you so much for joining us, Joan.
Okay, hello. Can you see and hear me? Hello there. Okay, I see you in the chat box. Hello. Yes, 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 yes. Excellent. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm sitting in my lovely office at George Mason University, which is located in Fairfax, Virginia. And here, as Lisa mentioned, I'm the academic coordinator of a program called Teaching Culturally and Linguistically Diverse and Exceptional Learners. And I did just want to mention that a little bit because you are all here because you must be interested in the teaching of English as a foreign or international language. And so what you are doing is actually working with people who are all culturally and linguistically diverse. And I'm sure they're exceptional as well. So the course that I'm teaching right now here at Mason is called Language and Literacy in Global Contexts. And so with my experience working with teachers from over 100 countries around the world, what I'm really doing today is taking a global context on English language teaching. And the specific topic is, of course, about empowering 21st century teenagers. So my area of expertise is teaching English as an international language to young learners and teenagers. And as most of you know, in the 21st century, English is used globally as the language of science, technology, the internet, business, diplomacy, as well as global problem solving. And in many countries, English, what we call a gatekeeper of opportunity. We know that teenagers around the world are studying English very hard because it can provide opportunities, either socioeconomically or maybe it's providing access to information. Many of you know the work of David Crystal, the linguist, and he estimated that there are approximately 450 million native speakers of English. But as you know, there are more than 1 billion speakers of English as a second or foreign language. And some people think, and Crystal thinks that in a decade, there's going to be about 3 billion non-native speakers of English. So no one country or people own English. And so it is indeed a global language. And therefore, the first thing we want our teenage students to do is to identify themselves as speakers of English. And my passion is to talk to teachers all around the world about empowering and inspiring our students of English to use this global language in purposeful ways that can make a positive impact in our world. And so you can see here, I think, the screen impact. And I wanted to mention that I'm going to be using examples that come from my new English language series for young teens. And you can see the covers of Impact. It's 4 levels. And I've been working very hard, National Geographic Learning, as a series editor for Impact, along with my co-series editor, Jody Crandall, as well as many, many other writers, editors, video producers, graphic artists, illustrators, Whether or not you use a series, I hope that after this webinar, you will be inspired to bring more than just grammar and vocabulary to your English learners. I hope you will see that we can put this language, put the grammar and vocabulary into context and bring the world into the classroom and inspire students to use English as a tool to engage with our world. So I'm hoping you're going to do all these things. And speaking of you, I would like to see who is here with us today. And so we're going to take a little poll. Are you guys ready for your first task? Okay, so I have a poll here that I'm going to open up. And so what I want you to do is to choose the one that most appropriately defines you. I just want to see who's out there. Right? Are you a primary teacher, a secondary teacher? Are you a university professor, a teacher trainer? Maybe you're an English teacher in training and you're studying how to be an English teacher. Okay, let us know. Okay, some of you are typing it in the chat box. Okay, if you can, just click on the screen, click one of those buttons. Okay, and I'm going to end the polling in 10 seconds. I'm going to count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the voting booth is closed. And here are the results. Okay, now, I guess as expected, most of you are secondary teachers, but we can see here, there's some teacher trainers, university professors, and a few primary teachers. Okay, so I guess we have the majority of secondary teachers because we are indeed talking about teaching teens. And this is great. Thank you so much. We're going to come back here. And now that I know who you all are, I also want to talk about who our students are. Who is going to be the audience for all these things that we're going to learn about today? And so let's take a look at this next page. We want to think about who are 21st century teenagers. Here's a picture of a very cool teenager, which is in one of the spreads in Impact. Okay, and I want you to look at her and maybe take a look at some of these teenagers here. Okay, and I want you to think about some adjectives that you might use to describe teenagers. Think about some adjectives to describe your students in your classroom. Tech savvy, always connected, independent, energetic. They're internet addicts. Thank you, Anna. Diverse, creative, expressive. Yes, cunning. Energetic, curious, multitasking, independent, impulsive, noisy. Okay, so there's obviously many ways that we can describe our teens. I see someone has said tweens. Yes, there's some of our tweens who are sort of in between. Very nice. So many of these adjectives you said are ones that I have here. And you can see some of these adjectives are similar, right? Moody, volatile. Maybe some of your teenagers are reactive to things. Okay, these come from teachers. Some say they might be lazy. I don't really necessarily think that, but maybe you say that. Naive, apathetic, impulsive, rebellious, emotional, unreasonable. Okay, so some teachers might look at teenagers and think about these types of adjectives. Or how about these types of adjectives? Maybe we can look at them like this instead. That they're, not volatile, but excitable, right? Aspiring, open-minded. Maybe they're actually being observant, right? Entertaining, adventurous, inquisitive, enthusiastic, adaptable, imaginative, and experimental. Okay, so the white ones, as you could see, might be a little bit negative. And I never like to look at my students in a way that's negative. let's try to take a look at their characteristics and think about how we might tap into them in order to teach them more effectively. Now, I used to teach an online course called Teaching English to Teens. And in that course, I did a little, what I call TET, Teaching English to Teens, poetry project. And there I had the teachers at the beginning of class brainstorm 5 adjectives that describe teenagers. And then I had them write a poem about it. And so we posted these on a blog, on Blogger, actually. And so you could see here, Blogger. And there are many, many different poems there and poems in different styles. But I brought one to show you, which is a poem that was written by a student of mine named Sasan Hakim from Lebanon. And here's what her poem looks like. Let's take a look. Teenagers, chaos they create for us as a bait. We fall into that rebellious, moody, irresponsible, and aggressive, we say, but see through. There's a different view. Eager, funny, friendly, and cool they really are. We've been there, so why not dare to listen, appreciate, and care? I love this because it goes to some negative views, but hey, let's see through and see them in a positive way. Okay, remembering that we were once teenagers going through that phase as well. And so we need to nurture them, care about them, and figure out how to engage them. Okay, and now I do want to think about the next question about this presentation, which is like, what? What are we learning about here? Okay, the title of my webinar is Empowering 21st Century Teenagers. We've now established who we're talking about, right? Teens in this way. And as teachers, whether we are English teachers or science teachers or social studies teachers, whatever, we are tasked with empowering our teens to be successful in our increasingly complex world in the 21st century. And we know that the 21st century requires certain skills. But what are those skills? Okay, so why don't we take a moment to focus on what are those 21st century skills? Because we're trying to empower our 21st century teenagers. Okay, so, maybe like many of you, sometimes you just go to Google or whatever search engine you use, right? And you can type into it and then see what comes up. And if you type into Google, you can see that, whoa, look how many results come up when you type it into Google, right? There's so much being written about in terms of 21st century skills. But really, what are they? Okay, in the Glossary of Education Reform, we talk about 21st century skills like this. The term 21st century skills refers to a broad set of knowledge, skills, work habits, and character traits that are to be critically important to success in today's world. Okay, and we know this as teachers, but how do we apply this as teachers of English, right? And now, 21st century skills, specific ones. What are some ones, okay, that you know? Yes, communication skills, collaboration. I see many of you typing in different skills. Cultural awareness, global open-mindedness, critical thinking, lifelong learning, teamwork, e-skills. Excellent. I like that. Ability to self-development and information search. Very good. So there are those 4 C's, 4 C's, right? Critical thinking is one. What's another of the 4 C's? Creativity. Oh, I like continuous learning. That's not one that I was going to mention. Yes. So 4 C's. What are some more? Creativity, we have that. Collaboration. Thank you, Elena. And one more. Yes, Imani, communication. Okay, so let's talk about these 4 C's really quick so that we know what we're trying to focus on with our 21st century learners. So first, critical thinking. Everybody's talking about it, right? Ask questions, no matter how intimidating it might seem. The exciting side of science really resides in the question. Okay, so this notion of questioning and critical thinking, right? What do we mean by critical thinking? We're talking about thinking critically about information you receive, right? Discovery, interpretation, and analysis, right? Synthesizing information, okay? Constructing arguments, and of course, problem solving. So this is very, very important for the 21st century. And why? Well, one of the quotes that I love most that I'm going to share with you comes from Alvin Toffler, the futurist. And he talks about, we as English teachers or language teachers are always thinking about this notion of literacy. And Alvin Toffler said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And this has everything to do with the fact that in the 21st century, our world is rapidly changing. There's so much information sharing, right, through the internet and social networks. And so things that may have been true yesterday may not necessarily be true tomorrow, right, or in the future. And so we need to make sure we have the skills to, not just learn something, but unlearn something and then relearn something new. Okay? And that's not always easy. And our education systems don't always support this, right? It's not about just teaching facts and memorizing it. It's teaching how to think about information, right? Okay. And another thing, another reason why this is urgent. Okay, and this quote comes from Richard Riley, who used to be the U.S. Secretary of Education, and he said, "We are currently preparing students for jobs that don't exist, using technologies that haven't yet been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet." So if you think about this, we're in a day and age where we as educators are preparing students for jobs we don't know what they are yet, right? That's how much our world is changing. And so we need to teach them these skills rather than facts and knowledge in order to prepare them for after they leave our schools and go out there into the real world. Next skill is, of course, communication. And, well, as English teachers, I think we're pretty good at trying to promote good communication. That's our job as language teachers. And by communication, I mean things like effective listening, right? Delivering oral presentations, communicate with digital media, right? Our 21st century learners need to be able to have facility with digital media as well. Also, this engaging in conversation and discussion, but communicating not like before, but on a global scale. And this is where teaching them English as a global language is so important. Okay? Now, more than ever, there are global teams in business and organizations, and the ability to communicate across cultures is essential. Doesn't matter where you're from. English is a global language, and therefore it's an important tool to use to articulate ideas clearly and effectively, as well as collaborate with others in diverse environments. So working in teams is a necessity for both students and employees, and especially knowing how to collaborate with people from different countries, cultures, socioeconomic backgrounds, different linguistic backgrounds as well. Okay? Something that I like us to think about in terms of communication is that it's about telling meaningful stories that will create awareness and hopefully inspire change for the better. So to be able to use language, right, to bring people in, to tell stories from where you are, from your perspective, is a way to bridge the gap. Because then if you can listen effectively and really hear other meaningful stories from people, that's how you can build a bridge across cultures. Okay, so as I said, we're working in collaborative teams. And so the next 21st century skill is, of course, collaboration, right? And so we have to think about this in terms of working in groups, but also taking leadership roles and taking initiative as well as cooperating with others. Okay, learning how to be flexible, not just stuck in your way, okay, and taking responsibility for the group, right, working towards something productive. So the quote here you can see, from invasive cells to schooling fish to human cultures, groups can accomplish what solitary individuals cannot. And this is really the crux of it. We are all living here on this planet, right? We're not alone, not with other people or with nature as well. And so we can't just live isolated. We need to learn how to work with each other. So collaboration is very important. All right. Next is, of course, creativity. And, creativity, innovation. This is something that sometimes is controversial. Some people say, is it a skill or is it just something you're born with? Can we teach creativity? What do you guys think? Can you teach creativity? Is it a skill or something that you're just born with? Creativity can be acquired. You can develop it. Someone said both. It can be stimulated, can be developed. Yes, absolutely. I think we all have the ability to be creative, and we can develop creativity in our students. Our ways of being creative might be different, right? So we might not be all creative in the same way, but you can absolutely inspire it, develop it, and teach it. So creativity also, let's talk about what it is, right? It's not just being an artist, right? It's also about being able to generate ideas, right? Getting information and then generating a new idea, right? Being able to design an idea and refine it. It's also being open and having the courage to explore. And of course, there's this element of being able to work creatively with others. Sometimes we feed off of each other, right, in order to produce something that's truly innovative. Most stories of innovation are not just one person inventing something alone. So we have to think about, how do we work together to promote creativity? Okay, and people create amazing things based on what they can imagine. And so how will our young teens find innovative solutions to the issues of the future if we don't give them plenty of opportunities to be creative and practice thinking outside of the box, right? That's what we want to do. Okay, let me click on to the next slide here. Here is an example of how you might encourage creativity and encourage students to express themselves in English. And you want to get them to express themselves using the language that you're teaching them, say, for that particular unit. But you want to give them the freedom to do so creatively in whatever manner they choose. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Ken Robinson, right? He has the world's most watched TED Talk. Great speaker. And, the title of his TED Talk was, Do Schools Kill Creativity? Yes, I see here many of you love Ken Robinson. Right, so do schools kill creativity? I work a lot with very young learners. And when kids are really young and discovering the world, what I find so interesting is that they are such critical thinkers and are always asking questions about what they see. And they're so creative. And then they get to school, and sometimes they get to school and they need to get in line with the curriculum. And so I really agree with his questioning about whether or not we're killing the creativity of our students, right? So instead of killing it, because our youngest learners are full of critical thinking and creativity and want to communicate and collaborate, we need to nurture this. Okay, so creativity, let's nurture it, let's not undermine it, provide students with opportunities to express themselves, and to be able to do that in class. So here you um, an activity called Express Yourself, and I'm going to open up this poem here. Now, this poem is written by a National Geographic explorer, Asher J., and she's a creative conservationist. So she's a fashion designer and an artist who helps raise awareness for sustainability and conservation. And take a look at what her poem says. The garbage, right? The garbage. Okay, just making sure you got it. Fashion is about excess, about wanting more. It's indulgent, vain, selfish to the core. Excess is euphemism for avoidable waste. Buying without need is in poor taste. In a finite world, resources are scarce, surplus, drains, and Earth has no spares. Fads repeat like history, data becomes news. Reduce, repurpose, recycle, upcycle, and reuse. Fight a failing model, save scraps, set the stage. Sew your own designs, but don't let your garb age. Awesome, right? Yes. All right, so um, in this activity, after reading the poem, then students discuss the meaning in small groups. Okay, and as well, after reading a poem and discussing the meaning, students are given a chance to express themselves on a topic, right? And it's through a medium of their choosing. So this is important, right? Because we want to give them choice. We want to give them some control over their own learning, making them more independent and more autonomous learners. So this not only allows them to be creative, but it also starts to give them confidence in expressing themselves. And this is just one example, right, of trying to give different types of ways for our teens to be able to express themselves. And so here you can see, I just realized you can't read it. So here you can see they're discussing the poem, right? They just are trying to figure out what is the poem about, and circle, right, the letter. Support your answer, right? Buying trendy fashions, reducing your fashion footprint, buying only recycled clothing, right? And then after they think about this, of course, then they are going to choose an activity, right? Choose a topic, fashion, group behavior, clothing, and its impact on the environment. And then they choose their own way to express themselves, whether it's a poem, a rap, a poster, a short video, whatever ways that they want. And then they get a chance to present their work. Okay, so something that we want to try to do is encourage them to be unique. And Josh Ponte is a National Geographic explorer, musician. He calls himself a musical explorer and filmmaker. And I love this quote from him because it says, "Look where everyone is looking, then turn 180 degrees and walk. You'll often find that that's where the gems are." And so it's encouraging students, right, to look at things a different way, right, to find their own way. Okay, don't just stay on the same path. And that is what I think, that is the beginning step for being creative, right? Because you're not just going to learn something, okay? Look where everyone is looking. You're going to do that first and learn, okay? See what everyone else is seeing, turn around, walk, and then discover something new. And I think that's really beautiful. Also, I want to share with you another National Geographic explorer, and he's also a musician. There's so many people who just let the world define them. What happens when you begin to realize another world is possible? That's art. How beautiful is that? Yeah, just soak that one in. I think that is really amazing. And I think that Paul Miller, he's also known as DJ Spooky, right? What I think he's doing is describing this creative process. And so while there's a need to show teenage learners about the world around them, about other cultures, values, and education, it can help define who they are. And that is the realization that they can be who they want to be, which is the real motivational factor for them. They're exploring their identities and trying to figure out who they are. Okay, but we need to help them explore this and to discover how to express themselves. So when we teach teenagers, we need to give them an environment within which they can do these things. So now you're probably thinking, okay, I'm with you. We want to teach them these 4Cs, 21st century skills. Okay. We want them to be creative. We want them to, explore themselves, learn how to communicate, collaborate. How do we do this? Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples about how. So if we incorporate the 4Cs into our lessons, of course, we're not only going to help prepare our teens for the future, but also make a more engaging and interesting English language classroom. So there are, lots of different activities that you can do. I'm just going to show you some of the creative projects and fascinating content that we developed to hopefully inspire you to find ways to do this on your own. Okay, so first of all, we want to bring into the classroom, global topics, global stories, right? As we said anyway, English doesn't belong to just one country. It's being used globally. So we really need to make sure that we're bringing in content that represents the whole world. As our students are culturally and linguistically diverse, right, we need to also bring in content that they can connect to. And so if we do this, we're hoping that students start to become more globally aware, right? Aware of the issues of the world, but also aware of different cultures and different people, different places. So by providing them with the content that reflects this, we're kind of starting them on their journey of discovery, kind of encouraging them to be explorers. Okay, so there are units that you can use all about food math, food sustainability, right? How about this? I love this unit on fashion footprint. It gets students to start thinking about how the fashion is really affecting the world that we live in. Like, how much water does it take to just make one T-shirt? Okay, the Garb Age poem is in this unit as well. Okay, so trying to get to think about the fashion that they like. Why do they wear what they wear, and how does it affect our world? Okay, also about food waste, food sustainability. So yeah, I love this. Isn't this a wild unit opener? Are you going to eat that? Okay, so it's talking about food waste and what we can do and what we should do. How about this? About living together, right? As I said before, we are not isolated on this earth. And it's not just we have to work with other humans. We're living together with many other living beings. So animal conservation and being aware of how what we do affects the environment is so important. Okay, so bringing in these topics, first of all, is going to be extremely helpful for your teenagers to start to get a global perspective, right? And maybe if they start to get this global perspective, of course, then maybe they will start to try to do things to try to make sure they're living well, but also doing things, living in a way that's going to be helpful to our world. Oh, here you can see footprint of fun. And also we want them to know that, hey, you're going to want to go out there and have fun. But also the fun that you have affects the world and what kind of waste happens, right? A big event like the Olympics, or if you go to a ball game, right? And there's all of this waste and trash. What happens to that? Okay, so bringing in global and social issues, extremely important. And one of the things I want to make sure we're doing is to address these as we are learning English. Okay? And why do we want to do this? Okay, one thing, and this comes from the work of Meili, who points out some reasons why it's important to address these topics in English language teaching. Okay, of course, one is obvious, right? Global issues are an area of concern. It affects all of us. And it provides content in a context in which language that's relevant and personal to the lives of our young teenagers, right? So what we're trying to do is also connect that and make it relevant to learners' lives. And of course, because it's authentic material, it's not trivial and it's not contrived. Okay, another thing, it's going to expand the narrow scope of language learning to a wider educational perspective. And this is what we mean. We're trying to integrate different content areas into language learning to make it more meaningful and relevant, okay? But also, it's going to broaden our students' minds in the classroom. I like this quote here. The English language, okay, here's another reason. The English language as the principal vehicle of global consumerism should bear some of the responsibility for making consumers of English aware of some of its less desirable effects. And I see that many of you are typing in now, yes, true, true, great, great, great. And this is one thing. I know I talked about how English is a global language, right? It's the world's lingua franca. So kind of on a practical level, you could say, hey, we're learning English in order to communicate globally. But not so naive not to realize that English and its impact in the world might also have these negative aspects and less desirable effects, right? So for example, you know, in business, okay, we might need to learn English and use it to communicate with each other. But if it's not your first language, okay, then maybe there are certain things you feel you need to give up in order to do business with a country that's English speaking. And so we really want to bring in these global and social issues, talk about people, places in a critical way, okay, making sure that we are really using it in a sensitive way and also in a way that promotes something more positive. So we also want to bring it in because I think that teenagers are really interested in these global and social issues as they are discovering who they are. Okay, so there was some research done for the Development Education Association that suggests that 80% of 11 to 16-year-olds were very much interested in global issues. And so we really should be integrating them into our educational programs for the importance of those issues, but also teenagers are interested in it. Okay, so these global issues could be economic, social, health, environmental, but these things are increasingly affecting our lives. And think about it. It's affecting our next generation who will be faced with the consequences of these issues that we've maybe created. And they're going to be tasked with solving them. So we really need to help prepare them for that. I did want to mention something else, which is that one of the programs that I used to run is an online program, an online English language course, and it was called the Youth Community Leadership Challenge. And this is an online course for teenagers and young adults from countries around the world to learn English as they study about topics of community leadership, social responsibility, and civic engagement. And one year we put in the same class, we connected teens from different countries with teens in a high school in Maryland. And this particular high school had a special global citizenship program. And something that a student said that really captured my attention was that there was a student who said that she was really puzzled when her teachers in this global citizenship program said that they would be preparing students to become good global citizens in their future. And why do you think she was puzzled when she heard that statement? that teachers were preparing students to become good global citizens in their future? Think about it in a moment. Any ideas? Why was this teenager so puzzled? Okay, so to my surprise, this very sophisticated teenager said that she didn't understand why they always said in the future, because she felt that she was a global citizen, a citizen of this world now. And so her question to her teachers was, what about the present? You know, I'm a global citizen now, and there is so much I can do to make a positive impact in this world. And I thought, yes, absolutely, right? It's not just about their future. We got to talk about what's happening now and encourage students to do something about what's happening now. All right, so let's take a look at some teenagers who have made a huge global impact. Leaders who are creative, who are entrepreneurial, who are making their own discoveries. Okay, so these are actually from Impact, and they highlight students who come from around the world, some teenagers. So here you can see here Kelvin Doe, who's from Sierra Leone, and he made his own radio transmitter. And so he's known for teaching himself engineering at the age of 13 and building his own radio station in Sierra Leone, where he plays music and broadcasts news under the name DJ Focus. Amazing, right? Taught himself at the age of 13. If you're not inspired by that, I don't know what you could find inspiring. Amazing. All right, here is Sanga Moses. He's from Uganda, and he's known to be an energy innovator. So he worked with engineering students to design kilns, briquetting machines that could turn food waste into fuel. Amazing in terms of conservation. All right, and how about these teenagers? There's Santana Draper and Maya Penn, and they're from the US, and they are two examples of young eco-friendly designers of fashion, clothing, and accessories. And so what we are trying to do is trying to show our teenagers that there are other teenagers their age who are going out there and making an impact and using their creativity and their innovation in order to impact the world. So I think they are extremely good role models. And so let's just talk for a minute about how we can integrate good role models into our educational programs. And I think for teenagers who are still exploring their identities, being able to present them with good role models is very important. As Aristotle said, we learn by practice, and the best practice is to follow a model of the virtuous person. And we could say virtuous in terms of being a good global citizen. Now, good role models. What makes a good role model? Let's think about it. Why don't you write some of your ideas into the chat box? What makes a good role model? Let me see your ideas. Okay, so by the way, I just want us to think about who the role models are for your teenagers right now. Because if you're like teenagers I know, they often look towards pop stars, towards actors and actresses, celebrities. And so one of the things that we really want to try to do is to be able to give teenagers better role models. I see football players, bloggers, yes, parents. Okay, so exposing our teenagers to other teenagers who are doing amazing work in this world, as well as National Geographic explorers, are probably way better ways to provide role models than just, you know, the celebrity or pop star. All right, now, teenagers, let's hear from them. Here are what teenagers say in terms of role models. What makes a good role model? Here's Christine, she's 11. I think a good role model is a person that can change the world in whatever way they do it in. Love it. It's very sweet. Scarlett, 15. A good role model is someone who inspires you and makes you believe that you can achieve your goals. Amy, 13. A good role model is someone who is an inspiration to others, someone who has achieved something amazing. Love it. Charlie, 11. I think a good role model is someone you can learn from and who you respect and admire. And Nicole, 13. A role model is someone who you want to be. Okay, so we want to provide good role models, and some research has been done in terms of qualities of role models. Okay, and Marilyn Price Mitchell for Roots of Action states that there are these 5 top qualities of what a role model should be. Okay, so we're talking passion and ability to inspire, right? Role models, not only they're passionate about their work, but it's infectious, right? And it just spreads. It gets people to care about things. 2, clear set of values. So the idea, though, is that, okay, I might have a clear set of values, but a role model is going to live their value in the world. And that's how we see them. Okay? So the values are part of who they are and how they might be able to, enact change. How about this? Commitment to community. We see that role models are not just self-focused, but other-focused. And teenagers can be pretty self-involved. And so I would say that this is a really important thing for them to see, that it's not just about them, right? It's a commitment to the community and focusing on the needs of others. And that takes me to number 4, selflessness and acceptance of others. So the idea is that, right, you're going to show your commitment to your community, but also it means you act in a selfless way and that you can be open-minded and accept others. Last thing is the ability to overcome obstacles. I love this quote by Booker T. Washington, who said, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which one has overcome." Okay, and so it's this idea, this very popular idea now of like grit, right? That you're not going to give up, that you're going to encounter obstacles, but that you can overcome them. All right, so these are all qualities that our students need if we're going to help them to become successful 21st century teenagers, right? So we're not just talking about success in school, but success in life, because as educators, that is what our goal is. So I just want to introduce this concept of National Geographic Explorer. We've already seen some of them, okay? But the reason why we choose National Geographic Explorers to be role models is that they don't just represent these values as a role model, right? They really epitomize them in their work, okay? So they are actually doing things in order to make our world a better place. So they are an active part of our international and global society. So they really epitomize the idea of global citizenship. So here are some of our National Geographic explorers that are highlighted, right, in the materials that we've worked so hard to create at National Geographic Learning and Impact. And if you can take a look at a few of them, I'd just like you to focus on a few. So on the left, you can see Daniel. And Daniel is what he calls himself as a guerrilla geographer. So what does that mean? He's a guerrilla geographer. So he wants to inspire us to see the world around us in new ways. And Daniel explores urban areas. And so what he does is he walks across cities and he takes photos after every 8 steps, right? So he's really trying to show you a view of the world. And so he's trying to get everybody outdoors to explore and discover the surprises the world has for us, to notice those things, right? Every 8 steps. And the person in the middle is Josh Ponte, who I read a quote from before, and he mixes traditional music with new music inspired by Gabon, the culture in the country of Gabon. And Josh is trying to help preserve traditional music and dance of Gabon, which is disappearing. So he's doing this by mixing traditional with new music. And so what he's trying to do is help new generations and inspire them to keep traditions alive in a creative way. And then the last one is Alberto. And Alberto is an underwater cave explorer and cartographer. And he goes into deep dives in the underwater caves in Mexico in order to learn more about the past. And he discovered in 2007, he and his team, a 13,000-year-old skeleton of a young girl. And from this discovery, researchers have been able to learn more about how our human ancestors migrated from Asia across the Pacific and through the Americas. Amazing work, right? This is what we want to do to try to inspire our teenagers. Okay, so you can see why we thought National Geographic Explorers would be the perfect role models for teenagers. This is why we highlight them in the content we develop to teach English. And you can see that they are very diverse in what they do. They're not just scientists, geographers, and archaeologists. They're also musicians and artists and filmmakers and conservationists of all kinds. And I also hope you notice that they come from around the world. So they are diverse culturally and linguistically and represent many different points of view through the work that they do around the world. And that is so important. Okay. Now, in our book, we also have a mission page. It's what we call like a mission page. And our National Geographic Explorers, being a role model, they're trying to encourage teens to explore and figure out who they are and what they want to be. And so here you can see another National Geographic Explorer. Okay, and this is Tan Lee from Vietnam, and she's an innovator and entrepreneur, and she created this portable brain scanner. And her lesson is don't give up. Right, part of the process is figuring out what doesn't work as much as what does work. All right, I know we're getting close to the time, so I'm going to move on pretty quickly. Okay, here's another National Geographic explorer who's an oceanographer, or she says an underwater detective, and she says to teenagers, be curious. Right? If you don't have questions about where you're going, then you're not going to be able to answer them or learn new things. Okay, so what we want to make sure our teenagers can do is to start to learn values and be inspired by our National Geographic explorers, right? And so here are all the different missions, things that we're trying to get students to be able to do, which is all about building them as 21st century global citizens, right? We want them to be able to collaborate, learn to adapt, do their own thing by keeping an open mind and looking for opportunities. Okay, now we do this, of course, through all different types of projects. And I'm actually going to move ahead a little bit because we only have about 5 minutes left. But I just want to mention that we have projects called Make an Impact, okay? And the whole idea behind project work is that's really how you're going to start to build these 21st century skills, right? Communicate, collaborate, encourage critical thinking and creativity. And so projects are going to be able to, give students choice, promote autonomous learning, as I said, develop those 4 C's, also integrating media, information literacy, creativity, and building global and social awareness. And so this is what we want to do in order to make our English language classrooms inspirational, and that, we hope, will motivate our teenagers to be able to communicate better in English. All right, so how can we empower 21st century teenagers? What are the ways? I see people like those koalas, yes. Okay, so we can empower 21st century teenagers first of all, helping them to communicate and collaborate effectively in English as an international language, right, globally. We want to give them the opportunity to learn about the world and the issues facing our world. We want to challenge them to use critical thinking and problem-solving skills, like through projects, and give them the platform to be creative and to express themselves in different ways. We want to inspire them with role models who epitomize the values and skills of a 21st century citizen, right, with these National Geographic explorers who are doing work to make our world a better place, who are also diverse in every way. They come from all around the world, and I think having role models that teenagers can connect with is so important. Okay? And finally, we have to make sure we show them that they have a voice and that they can make a difference and they can make an impact. Like the student who was questioning her teachers and saying, why do you keep saying you're going to help build our skills to be good global citizens in the future? We are global citizens right now. All right, so why are we doing this? These are my last words. Okay, first and foremost, why do we need to focus on this? We are teachers, right? We're all educators here. And we want our teenagers to be the best version of themselves. And we can help them achieve that. Okay? And we hopefully can help them to succeed in our modern world. And the world is rapidly changing, and so they need to be prepared for this 21st century world. Okay, so we're trying to prepare them with these skills. But most importantly, it's because they are our future. And they represent the future of our world. And the problems and issues that are facing the world today, issues such as global warming, right, energy, animal extinction, food, water, okay, all this turmoil happening in the world. These are not going to be solved by our generation, by us, okay, but by our next generation of learners. And so the teenagers of today have an important role, and we need to make sure our teenagers have the skills, knowledge, creativity, and global awareness to be able to solve these problems. Okay, so in addition to that, we need to make sure we instill in them, right, that they can make a difference. And to top it off, it's very clear that English is an important tool for making a difference in today's world. It is, after all, the de facto lingua franca of our world. And so it's an important tool for global communication and collaboration. So you, as English teachers, can make a positive impact on our next generation and the world. And as National Geographic explorer Jack Johnson says, your actions, your voice, and your choices all have a huge impact. And so I hope you are inspired to get your students inspired to know that their actions and their voice and their choices are all going to have a huge impact on our world. So thank you so much for your attention. I hope that you're going to go back to your classrooms, be inspired, and get your 21st century teenagers to feel empowered to make a difference in the world. So
Okay.
I don't know if Lisa has any last words.
I do. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, I just want to thank everyone again so much for coming. I know it is the full hour, but if anyone does have any questions for Joan, we can probably take a few questions. So if you do have a question, you can type it in the chat box. We have time for just a few.
Oh, hi, Hicham. I miss you too.
Okay. Oops. Give me 1 second. Okay. Hi, Joan. Did you work in the developing countries to introduce the amazing materials of NGL that is our world to empower 21st century skills among teens? If yes, what are the challenges and successes you observed?
Well, actually, these materials have just come out, and maybe Lisa has more information about where they've gone in terms of developing countries. I can speak to our other series, Our World, which is the, the lower level for primary school. That's been out for many years. Impact literally just came out. Okay, so I can't speak to the experience with that. But in our other National Geographic Learning series, that's being used all around the world, I think that the effect has been super positive because I think that students can connect to the content in these materials much better because they provide a global perspective, right? Most English language series, which to me is very sad, they only really represent British culture or American culture. And so you only see people from these cultures and you're only communicating related to those cultures and maybe issues in those cultures, but that's not really what's relevant to people now. And so the material we have in National Geographic, I always like to point out that it's so beautiful with all the photos and all the videos that we have, but it's not just a pretty face, right? The content that is there goes deep, and the content about these global and social issues are relevant to students of all ages. And so, that I think is one of the main reasons why we've had success with our materials, because students are much more engaged in the learning of English and also using English because they're motivated to talk about how the information they're getting about the world affects them. And also, we always make sure in our materials that we are able to give students an opportunity to connect it with their local context. Whatever the topic is, and they might be learning about different countries, we always bring it back home to talk about the connection to their country, culture, and local issues so that they can also see that they can make an impact right where they are, right outside their front doorstep.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. And I think we have time for maybe one more question. I see a question that's actually a great question. Do you have any advice on inspiring teens who are already a little overwhelmed by sometimes the volatility of today's world? What are some ways you can inspire teens and help them stay positive?
Yeah, well, you know what? I do think that fundamentally we have a very resilient and positive spirit within all of us. I believe that's there. And with our young learners and our teenagers, especially teenagers, now they're kind of accessing information around the world. Maybe that can bring them down, or maybe they're starting to get more cynical at an earlier age. But I do think that that spirit is there and is willing to look at the world in a positive way. And here's the thing. Every single one of these National Geographic explorers and role models we present, they are going out there with their one area of expertise to try to make a difference with what they're passionate about. And so what I would say to teenagers who might get down about the state of the world, I would say, hey, what is your passion, right? Is it fashion, music, science, exploration, photography? You see how all of these explorers have found a way to take what they're talented in and what they're passionate about and finding a way to utilize that to make a positive impact in the world. So that's what I would do. I would tap into teenagers' interests, talents, their passions, and guide them and show them how that might be a way to make a positive impact with all of the different things that are going on in the world. I think that's pretty inspirational. I don't know about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much, Joan. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have time for today. I am seeing some questions about our programs and our materials. I will make sure that National Geographic Learning representatives get in touch with everyone who has questions about those, and we will definitely get back to you on your questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. There will be a recording of this webinar that we will send to you, along with a certificate of participation and a project pack that is from Impact impact as well that you can try out with your teenage learners. So that will be sent to you as well. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to Dr. Shin for her fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.